Try this again. Good morning, guys. I did a roof yesterday, so my body is just pain everywhere. I went to the gym this morning though, stuck it out, which made more pain. But then I got to get a massage and a tan, so that was nice. Why am I talking to you like this? Digital blackface. That's what I want to talk about. What the fuck? This is just ridiculous. It's funny, except that a bunch of yous are gonna try to reinforce it. Morons, bunch of Karens will be like, you can't share that meme. You're white. So when I first heard the term digital blackface, I thought it must have been an app. You know, there's that app that makes you look like a girl or a guy or whatever, right? You got those apps that can make you the opposite sex. Well, I figured they'd come up with one that made you black. Or it could make you race, whatever race, right? Just change your face to come up with whatever race. I bet you that exists and isn't called digital blackface. I bet you somebody could probably go and find that app that turns you into a girl or a guy, make your face black or Chinese, do a whole video like that, and nobody would say, oh, that's digital blackface. They'd be like, oh yeah, that's fine. It's like the guy with Justin Trudeau. He painted his whole body black, not just his face. And on multiple occasions, I might add. He didn't just do this once. He did his whole body once, but he did the blackface thing a bunch of times. None of you fucking idiots that are going to enforce this digital blackface thing say a word about Trudeau. You pretend like it didn't matter, didn't happen, or whatever, and you eat his excuse up. It was a different time in the 90s. No, it wasn't. It was a different time in the 90s because racism was pretty well over, and there was nobody fueling the flames at the time. Not really. But there were still outlying racist people, like Justin. That was the difference. But most of us weren't racist back then. My age goes with the year, especially in the 90s and the 2000s. I turned 20 in the year 2000. So all my teenage years, like 1990, I turned 10. Or just before 90, I turned 10. And then, so 91, 11, 92, 12, 13, 14, right? So just, right, perfect, right? So now I'm 43. I was born in 79, but in October, so only a couple of months of 79. Anyway, fucking, yeah. In the 80s, there was a lot of, a little racism, but a lot of, like, gayism, hate, whatever. Still, it was coming around more and more, and people were like, we didn't hate gays. How about that? And we wouldn't like most people wouldn't have beat you up for being gay or anything, or maybe would have discluded you from the circle a bit, because the guys would be uncomfortable that you'd want to fuck them or whatever. But what we were whatever racist towards gay people, but it was what we did was you called everybody gay, and it was like the big razz, or the biggest joke that you could say, like calling somebody a goof in prison. Excuse me. I had no idea about this, but apparently that goofy, that's fucking huge in the pen, right? But it's just silly in the world, right? Well, that was fag or faggot back in the day. We called everybody a fag, and it was just a big joke, really. And then the kids that were fags, yeah, they got picked on. Like, I can remember the feminine kids getting razzed up a bit, but it was more the feminine teachers that we razzed. Those feminine boys just became friends with all the girls, and then actually we were all jealous of them because they're hanging out with like all the hot chicks, right? But yeah, eventually everybody just kind of whatever. We got used to it. We got over that fear of them wanting to bang everybody. Mostly because the dudes that were most afraid of that weren't considered attractive to fags. Or whatever. Anyway. I'm just ranting now. This digital blackface thing, I think it's, well, it's obvious that they're just trying to drive division between the blacks, whites, Chinese, Asian. If we hate each other, we don't hate them. If you're busy hating, whoever, or being hated, I think that's part of it. The other big part of it, see, you got to think past George Soros and Bill, and all these guys at the top that we think are at the top, everybody at Davos, and think about the Edomites. So Edom hates the Hebrews, Joseph, and they want to destroy them, but they're God's chosen people, so they can't destroy them. So instead, the other thing they wanted was the blessing. So they've taken the blessing. Excuse me. Back by being converted. When they were converted, in the book of the Maccabees, it says that they were no different from Hebrew or no different from Jews from that day forward. Maybe different race, different color, but not different in the eye of God. So then once everybody got kicked out of Israel, but the Edomites blended in and did well. Got to themselves in position to be kings and queens. So, and priests and things. And then eventually came up with Catholics. But what they did to the Hebrews, see, the Hebrews they had to run, and then they kept being pushed out of everywhere they tried to settle. Nobody wanted them. And then, so the 10 tribes traveled, and we follow them across Europe and into Asia, like Japan. And then there was actually a walking trail. It's underwater now, but we found the trail, and you can see like the wheel marks and the fucking footprints. It's a road that goes all the way to North America. And then they came over here and became, I'm sure there were already Japanese people over here at that time. And then the Hebrews followed them over, and they were able to settle here because there's tons of room. And eventually the the races blended together, and they were just one look. Anyway, so, and then the other 2 tribes were pushed all the way south, and then became slaves. And they were grabbed up on the ships, brought over here, separated from their families, and then the guys who knew their heritage were beaten and whipped until they was like, "What's your name, boy?" Toby or whatever, right? Like they had to change their names, and they had to stop speaking of their heritage, forget it. And then not having their kids around to talk to anyways, they were all separated, especially those generations, right? And then the tougher ones were murdered out in front of everybody in order to make an example. If you read the books on how to break slaves, it's fucking disgusting. And then so then the heritage was forgotten. After one generation of that, it's gone. The kids don't know it anymore, especially in the 2 generations of that. Even the kids that had like a little vague memory here, they're gone now too. And it was just like a little story here, there, right? And one that if you spoke in front of the boss or whatever, you get beaten, right? Not that the boss would even know why. That's the other thing that gets me. See, the Edomites owned the boat and brought over the slaves, and they owned the farms. And then they took white people, and they said, because the white people were just slaves too, they said to them, if you want to rise up above slave status, all you have to do is own slaves yourselves. So we're going to give you these houses to live in, and here's these slaves to work the field. Here's horses and guns and stuff. You make sure that they work. Harvest the harvest. Keep what you need, feed your families, whatever. And then you ship so much to us, 15%, whatever. I don't really know what the end deal was, the cash deal, but that's how it all worked, right? So they own the farm, they own the ships, and then they just had people all work it for them. And then they actually would own all the slaves because they own the ship, right? So then when the boatload of slaves got dropped off, and you can find this all in the tax records, the boatload of slaves would get dropped off, and they'd go to these Edomite houses, and you'd be taxed for every slave you own, right? But they would say, well, I don't own these slaves. they're for sale. I'm an auction house, so they're just coming through here. And obviously they'd work them on their farm and plantation while they were selling them off, spreading them around. But they would, that was their tax loophole where they could get around the taxes and stuff. And so, which gets me, so then there's their heritage gone. And then with the natives that we call Native Americans, the lost 10 tribes, Columbus came over and he brought Hebrew translators and he found out what they knew and started trading with them. Most of the tribes had forgotten, lost their heritage. But there was a few. There was one that even still had the breastplate with all the stones and everything on it. And so there was a few, like the Mayans and things, that still remembered all their heritage, right? So they had to be annihilated. And that's why certain tribes, the Mohicans or whatever, like, were pretty well wiped to extinction, because those were the tribes who still remembered their Hebrew heritage the most, and they had to go. And then the rest of them, well, you can't kill them all, because God's not going to let that happen. But they're the nation builders. And as long as they're not with God, they're going to be slave to Edom. So all Edom has to do is keep them from God. And he's got them, and then he's powerful over them. So he had to just erase that knowledge, and then once the knowledge was gone, then he could take away or then he doesn't have to worry. They're not going to go back to God. So then he had to take and own the Catholics, and translate the Bible, and delete certain books from it. Those books got translated later, like God protected them. They're still around. You can still go find them. And then open up seminary schools and train pastors to only talk and only know about certain things, right? And tell them that, oh, well, all the Hebrew books are uninspired. They're just history books. You don't need them. Only what King James translated into this Bible, that's all the information that you guys need. You don't need the rest. And God says in there that his people will perish for a lack of knowledge. Well, duh. Anyway, I go to other churches, or well, I tried all these churches. They're all the same. None of them know the Bible. Or, well, they know the Bible, but they don't know. They all deny certain parts, and they deny big chunks of scripture, and they'll deny even chunks of the Bible. They'll be like, oh, well, we've gone to the moon, science, blah, 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 space. Fucking millions of years, monkeys, blah, blah, blah. 1,000 years is a day in God's times, and we're just wrong about God. They didn't understand when they wrote the Bible. How can you believe that it's the inspired word of God and then also believe that they didn't understand? It's one or the other, because God fucking understands. He knows what he created. He's seen it. He knows the difference between an apple core and a foundation. So he's not going to say that the earth has a solid foundation and is immovable if it's got a core and it's shooting through fucking space, flying around the sun. So, with that, there's just enough to keep all those Hebrews, even if they're going to church, they're not going to God. not fully, not properly, right? And not powerfully enough to actually move a nation and wake them all up. So no. So part of this reverse racism thing is if the Hebrews are in vengeance and trying to make that they're the dominant race and all that other stuff and trying to repress and hate white people, you're never going to find God. He's not. No, forget it. You're not going to wake up. You're not going to have the movement. You're not. It's going to keep a divide, right? Same with reparations. When they all talk about reparations, that's to keep a divide between them and God, because they're saying that God's punishment for them was wrong and unjust, and they want us to pay them back for what happened before. Now, that will happen where they will be given the wealth when they go back to Israel, but they're not going to be given the wealth before they make the movement, kind of thing. Like, that was the last step. That was the last thing God said to them. Okay, now go and borrow from these from the Egyptians before you leave. Borrow up whatever you can, store it up, do this, do that, pack it up, and let's go. They owe you anyway. Don't worry about it. But he never ever said, like, get reparations or anything like that. He never said that his punishment was unjust. He said they went too far. Go to those ones that went too far. Borrow money from them because they over profited from the punishments that you guys were under. Yes, you were supposed to be working and you were supposed to be kept from your land because that was my punishment for you. But then they did all this other stuff, beating yous and raping your women and doing all this other, that was all over the fucking line. All of that was way over the line. God's going to deal with that. But all this other stuff, but the punishment was just. It was what was supposed to happen. You're not supposed to get paid for the work that you did because it was God's punishment that you did that work. And that's the way it was in First Egypt, and that's the way it's going to be in Second Egypt. But when you go asking for reparations, that's the Edomites getting you to ask for that too. And then you end up putting yourself in a bad way. And because I'm white saying this, the church that I was with, who was like this close to waking up, won't listen about it. And I tried every which way to tell them, but they just won't. But it's very much God to test that pastor by sending someone of the wrong race, a non-Hebrew, to give them the message from God, because it's humbling. God's saying, can you take my message no matter where it comes from? Or can you only take my message when it comes the way you want it to come? Right? And you've already untrusted me with COVID vaccines, trusting the press about all this other shit while that was going on, when we've just proven that they're liars. You prove they're liars over here. They lied to you over here. The government, the science, the industries all lied to you all over here. Evolution, all that other stuff. But they wouldn't lie about this. And it's just like, No, man, they're going to lie about everything. And don't blame the individual scientist or doctor. Most of them are just like you and I. They were taught the same shit in school, right? And they think that all these big formulas that they're looking at, they look really good. They all work out. Why wouldn't they be real? There's just no testable, demonstratable science behind those formulas, right? Like they say, oh, this is the formula for gravity, blah, 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 all this information about gravity. Okay, well, how did you test that? Oh, an apple fell down and hit a guy in the head. What? Yeah, and so he decided what goes up must come down. Well, the apple never went up. It grew up there, first off, so it's not like he was throwing the apple up in the air and it come back down and he said, oh, look, what goes up must come down. No. He should have went, oh, the sky is falling. That should have been his fucking theory. Right? But anyways, so what other science do you have to prove gravity? Well, nothing. We dropped a bowling ball and a feather inside of a vacuum and they hit the ground at the same time. And so it disproved our mathematical formula that inquires mass and all this other shit. So we concluded that the Earth moved to the objects, and the objects just stayed still because they were floating. Without gravity, without air. Everything floats in space, don't you know that? Well, it still doesn't prove that actually disproves gravity entirely. Because if you took out the air and the objects just fucking floated there until the Earth came to them, then where was gravity during all this? Gravity should have grabbed those objects and yanked them in. And should have really grabbed the bowling ball, like hardcore, because it's such a dense and solid object and mass and density and all that other shit. Right? So you can't give me a mathematical formula that I need to use without evidence. You can't even define what gravity is. There's not even a fucking definition to the word. There's a definition, oh, it's the force, blah, blah, blah. Created by what? Oh, well, it might be this, or it could be that, or it might be the core of the Earth, it could be the spinning, it could be the multiple, it could be both, it could be the size of the object, because the moon has gravity and it doesn't have a hot core, so it could just be the size of the object, it could be this, could be that. Oh, but the core just changed rotation. How do you know that? Have you ever been anywhere near that hot core that you so-called talk about? No. When you dig down, does the Earth get hotter? No. It just maintains the temperature. Oh. So, where's your evidence? What are you talking about, you fucking assholes? You have no idea. But you convinced all these people, and then they push your story. Oh, it has to be true because everybody would have to be in on it. No, not at all. Just the people that perpetrated it would have to be in on it, and then they just have to convince everybody else in the cult. That's how cults work, right? You can't, like, everybody wasn't in on it during Hitler. There was just that brainwashed mentality. Right? So they're not in on it, most of them. And then the ones who catch on, right? Because there are people that catch on, that are smart and they see through it, and they, after all this study, they get pissed, they see it. So there's two different reactions to that. One guy denies that evidence, pushes it out of his fucking brain, goes on the defense to just like a mother does when you know her son just raped and murdered somebody and he's in prison or whatever, and she's like, oh, he's a good boy, he's just a little messed up or whatever, you know. Or the mother who's, you know, the son's like a thief or whatever, and she says, oh yeah, you know, he's gone away to war or whatever, you know, or the the kids are just, the husband's out sleeping around and she's just like, no, not my husband. We're a happy relationship and this and that, and we love each other and all this shit. Same kind of thing, right? Like that's one reaction. The other reaction's to fucking lose it, like I would do, or like you see a lot of girls that go out and they fucking smash the car with a baseball bat kind of thing. I wouldn't do that, but I mean, I when I was confronted with that information, I got angry about it. And I went out and learned fucking everything that I possibly could in the other direction in order to, whatever, I don't know, educate others and just to better understand the fucking everything. Don't you feel it necessary? Don't you feel like you should have to know all that stuff? The world and how it works and what it is and all that. And don't you feel like pissed off that they lied to you all this time and that they lied to you when you were a little baby you, and they're lying to little baby mini you right now? The same lies, some of them even worse. So anyways, the scientist that deals with it that way, back in the day before internet, it was easy to deal with that guy. You just discredit him. Write some fucking, you know, you own all the newspapers, you own all the fucking magazines, you own all the other scientists, and you own all the evidence. And anything that the evidence that you didn't like, you put in the Smithsonian or the Vatican, and now you got, it's just you against them. But you own all these other ones, and they're brainwashed fully and still think, most of them still like love their theory. So you go to that guy and you say, shut your mouth, or you know, your job's over, your career's over, you'll be fucking lucky to be able to wash test tubes in a lab. Chances are you're going to be at fucking the hardware store stocking shelves or whatever. Like you're nothing. You're fucked. You're all your student loans and all this debt that you have. You're going to lose your house, your family, everything. It's all gone. You keep talking about this shit. It's all gone. Just shut your fucking mouth. If you dig something up, well, you got to take it to them first. I've said this 1,000 times. If I fund your archaeological dig, then I make you sign a contract that says you bring everything to me. I tell you what you're allowed to release to the public and everything else. If you release it to the public, I'm going to sue your fucking ass. Right to nothing. And then I'm going to disgrace you. And I'm going to have, you know, brainwashed puppet over here and psychopath fucking buddy that I pay off that's super smart, but he doesn't give a shit. He's just psycho. Like there's people out there that are like that know all this stuff. They know all the truth. And they don't give a shit. They fucking, if they can profit and live good and all that kind of shit, they somehow, I don't understand it, but whatever. I really don't understand it. How could you know about God and Satan and all that and know it's all real and know the Bible's real and know what the world is and what the universe is, and then go with Satan? Well, because he can offer you so much on this earth. That's what it is. In this life. And immediate gratification right now, today. Anyway, so that's the way they dealt with it in the past. And that's the only reason that everybody's realizing it now is because of the internet. And it's easier for those doctors who were being disgraced to talk to all of us. Right? or were under threat of disgrace. And now they're retiring too. So now they're like, fuck you, I'm retired, you cocksucker. I'm going to fucking tell them the things that I'm not under contract on. So you can't sue me, but go fuck yourselves. And others have done their confessionals and archived it for 5 years after their death. So that I'm gone. Fuck you. But here's all the evidence against you. Here's my story, the truth, right? For the future. My warning. Yep. Anyway, that's all. Don't fall for this trick, guys. Don't be that stupid. There's no... The digital blackface thing isn't... It's just another racial divide trick that they're trying just to get us to hate each other. It's working. A lot of people are really, really low frequency and knowledge. I pray for all of you to have wisdom, discernment, knowledge, and understanding. God bless.